All right, I want to just go through a few examples of using the sum and difference identity for sine and cosine. So if we want to find the exact value of cosine pi over 3 plus pi over 2, obviously we're dealing with the sum identity for cosine. And so we recall that is going to be cosine cosine minus sine sine. So we mean cosine of pi over 3, cosine of pi over 2. And with the cosine identity, we have to use the opposite sign in between, then sine sine. So sine pi over 3 and sine of pi over 2. Now we start evaluating all these trig values that we know, which is all of them. And for cosine of pi over 3, that's going to be 1/2. Cosine of pi over 2 is 0. Minus the sine of pi over 3, which is root 3 over 2. And the sine of pi over 2 is 1. Now when we simplify that, that term's 0. So it looks like we'll end up with negative root 3 over 2. Let's say we want to find the exact value of sine 42 degrees cosine 18 degrees plus cosine 42 degrees sine 18 degrees. Just the form of this, having sine and cosine, the same two angle measures, 42 degrees and 18 degrees. This should remind you of one of the sum or difference identities. Since it's sine cosine, cosine sine, that means we're dealing with the sum or difference identity of sine with using 42 degrees and 18 degrees. But is it plus or is it minus? And with sine, the adding or subtracting that's in the middle is going to be the same. So when we add these two together, 42 degrees plus 18 degrees makes 60 degrees. A nice value that we should know. And for the sine of 60 degrees, that is the square root of 3 over 2. Last one, if we have sine 15 degrees, and we want to find that exact value, it's important to write it in terms of angles that we know, some nice angles. And for 15 degrees, that's going to be 45 degrees minus 30 degrees. Two nice angle measures. Then we use the difference identity for sine, which is going to be sine cosine. So the sine of 45 degrees, cosine of 30 degrees. Like we said with sine, the adding or subtracting that's in the middle is going to be the same. So sine cosine minus cosine sine. So cosine 45 degrees, sine of 30 degrees. Then evaluate. For 45 degrees, sine is going to be root 2 over 2. Cosine of 30 degrees is root 3 over 2. Cosine of 45 degrees, root 2 over 2. And the sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. When it's all said and done, we have common denominators of 4. In the first term, root 2 times root 3 is root 6. And in the second term, root 2 times 1 is root 2. So we can leave our answer like that.